After centuries of Targaryen rule, the reign of Mad King Aerys saw the continent of Westeros fracture into rebellion and civil war. Lord Robert Baratheon of the Stormlands, along with his allies in House Stark, Aeron, and Tully, led a campaign against the throne, eventually joined by the Greyjoys and Lannisters to defeat the Targaryens and take the capital of King's Landing. Although the king and most of the royal family was killed, a pregnant Queen Rhaella escaped to the nearby island of Dragonstone, along with her son Viserys. Unfortunately, the queen died shortly after giving birth to a baby girl during a terrible storm. Young Viserys and Daenerys Stormborn, as she came to be known, were now alone in the world, and so the garrison at Dragonstone made plans to save themselves by giving the children to the new king of Westeros, Robert Baratheon. However, Sir Willem Darry, an elderly Targaryen loyalist, was able to smuggle them off the island to live as exiles in Braavos. Although Daenerys had fond memories of this time, remembering a house with a red door and a lemon tree, their kindly old guardian soon died, and once again the children were alone. Soon enough, their servants abandoned them, stealing anything of value they could, and the Targaryen exiles were forced out of their home. The two traveled throughout the free cities of Essos, at first treated like foreign dignitaries by local nobility, but eventually seen as unwanted guests, even nicknaming Viserys the Beggar King. To survive, they sold every last memento and treasure they had, including their mother's golden crown. After losing the last symbol of their royal heritage, Viserys grew increasingly hostile and violent towards his sister, the years of hardship stripping away the last of his joy. Finally, some relief came for the Targaryen children when Illyrio Mopatis, a wealthy merchant of Pentos, opened his home to them, even arranging a marriage for 13-year-old Daenerys to Khal Drogo, leader of a Dothraki Khalasar of 40,000. Viserys agreed to the arrangement, believing that they would take up his cause and conquer Westeros. During the wedding ceremony, Daenerys received a number of gifts, including 3 petrified dragon eggs from Illyrio Mopatis, while Viserys met an exiled Westerosi knight named Ser Jorah Mormont, who pledged himself to the Targaryen cause. Later, the bride was taken away to consummate the marriage, and although she was terrified of the strange and violent Dothraki culture, her new husband did not attempt to force himself on her, waiting for her consent before laying together. As wife to a Khal, Daenerys was given the title of Khaleesi and granted her own retinue of warriors, slaves, and servants, though as a woman she had little actual authority over the larger Khalasar. After the ceremony, they traveled east to Vaes Dothrak, the only Dothraki city located by the Mother of Mountains and Womb of the World. At first, Daenerys struggled adapting to Dothraki ways, but soon began to dream about dragons, and awoke with renewed confidence and determination. Over time, she learned the Dothraki language and embraced their rugged culture, even developing genuine feelings of love for her husband. She also began to stand up for herself against Viserys, who grew increasingly hostile and belligerent as the Khalasar moved further away from Westeros. Ser Jorah attempted to explain that Dothraki culture did not trade favors, instead receiving gifts and later giving gifts back. But the process could not be rushed, and Viserys would have to be patient. At the age of 14, Daenerys revealed she was pregnant, and so once arrived at Vaes Dothrak, a ceremony was performed where she ate the raw heart of a horse in front of the Dosh Khaleen, the widows of former Khals who acted as advisors to the Khalasars. Upon successfully consuming the heart, the Dosh Khaleen predicted that her unborn child was the stallion who will mount the world, a long-awaited hero of prophecy who would unite the Khalasars. After the ceremony, a feast was held, where Viserys Targaryen arrived drunk and armed with a sword, a violation of the laws of the city which forbade weapons. The exiled prince then pointed the sword at his sister's pregnant belly, threatening to kill them both unless Drogo fulfilled his promise to give him a crown. Drogo agreed, melting golden medallions and pouring the molten liquid over Viserys' head, giving him his golden crown. Daenerys did not turn away from the death of her brother, accepting it and embracing her role as the last living heir to the Targaryen throne. Drogo, however, showed no interest in taking his army across the sea to conquer Westeros, until Ser Jorah Mormont saved Daenerys from an assassination attempt, convincing the Khal that his wife's enemies in Westeros must be destroyed. The Khalasar then traveled south, raiding local villages and defeating a rival Dothraki faction to collect slaves for sale to Slavers Bay. In this way, they might purchase ships for their journey to Westeros. However, Daenerys did not approve of the rape and pillaging she witnessed, doing her best to save a number of women from the aggressive Dothraki. Drogo received a minor wound while killing the rival Khal, and although it did not seem serious, Daenerys assigned one of the women she rescued, the god's wife Meereen Mazdur, to treat the injury. Meereen Mazdur was called a Magi by the Dothraki, a group seen with disdain for their use of blood magic. However, Daenerys did not share their concern, and so allowed her to treat Drogo's wounds with her medicines. The Khal at first allowed it, but came to find the treatment uncomfortable, tearing off her work and replacing it with mud plaster. The wound then grew infected, causing Drogo to weaken and fall off his horse, a sign that a Khal could no longer fulfill his duties as a leader. Daenerys then ordered Meereen to use her blood magic in order to save him, and she agreed, but warned that only death may pay for life. The god's wife then ordered that no one enter the tent during the ritual, but as they waited outside, the Khalasar erupted into fighting, with many believing Drogo was dead and others objecting to the use of magic. Daenerys became surrounded by violence, as her personal soldiers and Jorah Mormont fought to defend their position. Daenerys then went into labor, passing out in Jorah's arms, as he carried her inside the tent to be treated by Meereen, who was still performing the ritual on Drogo. When Daenerys awoke, her child was dead, her husband alive though in a catatonic state, and the Khalasar was gone, abandoning their fallen leader and choosing new Khals to rule them. Left with only a few slaves and sworn warriors, Daenerys euthanized her husband to end his suffering, then placing Drogo and her 3 dragon eggs in a funeral pyre along with Meereen Mazdur, who appeared to have purposely betrayed her, claiming that with her husband and son gone, they could no longer hurt innocent people, and so Daenerys sentenced her to burn. As a red comet appeared in the sky, the fire was lit, and with the pyre alight, Daenerys fearlessly walked into the inferno. In the morning, when the fire burned out, her servants searched among the ashes, and found Daenerys unharmed alongside 3 freshly hatched dragons, naming them Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. Traveling south, Daenerys led her people to the city of Qarth, where she was invited to stay in the palace of Xaro Xhoan Daxos, who offered a marriage alliance only to be turned down. The mother of dragons was then rejected when attempting to convince the pureborn rulers of the city to join her cause. She then met with a mysterious woman in a red mask named Quaithe, who urged her to visit the far eastern city of Asshai. With few options left in Qarth, Daenerys turned to the warlocks of the House of the Undying, visiting their tower alongside her dragon Drogon. There she saw a number of visions and was told she would light 3 fires, one for life, one for death, and one to love, ride 3 mounts, one to bed, one to dread, and one to love, and face 3 betrayals, one for blood, one for gold, and one for love. In the end, the warlocks attacked her, but she was defended by Drogon, who breathed fire upon them, allowing for Daenerys to escape. No longer welcome in Qarth, an assassination attempt was made on her life, but she was saved by a white-haired man calling himself Arstan, who was sent by her former benefactor, Illyrio Mopatis, along with 3 ships to take her home to Pentos. They hastily left the city, but stopped in Astapor along Slavers Bay before returning to the Free Cities, still needing an army for her conquest of Westeros. During the voyage, Ser Jorah Mormont professed his love for Daenerys, but she did not return his feelings. She was, however, lonely since the death of her husband, and so took her handmaiden Irri as a lover. Once arrived in Astapor, she purchased every unsullied warrior available, slave soldiers castrated at a young age and trained their whole lives for battle. To pay for the army, she gave them her dragon Drogon, only to betray the slavers after the deal went through, ordering her new army to kill their former rulers and take the city. The good masters of Astapor were quickly defeated, and Daenerys freed every one of their slaves, including her own soldiers, asking them to follow her as freedmen. Leaving a council to rule the city, Daenerys Stormborn led her new army to the nearby city of Yunkai, continuing her campaign to end slavery in the region. The wise masters who ruled Yunkai, having heard of the fall of Astapor, hired the Stormcrows and Second Sons mercenary companies to strengthen their defenses. However, this city also fell to her forces, aided by the betrayal of Daario Naharis, who killed the other 2 leaders of the Stormcrows and joined Daenerys. Once again, she freed all slaves and earned yet another nickname called Misa, meaning mother, by the local population. She then took her army north to Meereen, the final city along Slavers Bay, where she found that the great masters had nailed 163 slave children to mileposts. When she arrived, yet another assassination attempt was made on her life, but she was once again saved by Arstan, who revealed himself to be Sir Barristan Selmy, former Kingsguard of Westeros, seeking to serve House Targaryen once more. Sir Barristan also revealed that Ser Jorah Mormont was originally a spy, sent by the court of King Robert Baratheon. Shocked that her two closest advisors were not who they seemed, she ordered that they go on a mission to infiltrate Meereen through the sewers, while the army attacked above, in order to free the slaves in the city so they might revolt against their masters. Although this was an extremely dangerous assignment that could easily have resulted in their deaths, they successfully completed the mission, leading to the fall of the city. Afterwards, Daenerys forgave Sir Barristan for the deception, but could not forgive Jorah, and exiled him from Meereen. The queen then nailed 163 masters to posts in front of the Great Pyramid as retribution for the children they killed, and went about putting the city in order. With Meereen conquered, Daenerys soon learned that the Council of Astapor fell to a butcher named Cleon, who declared himself king and enslaved the former aristocracy. In Yunkai, the wise masters had returned to their old ways and were gathering allies to fight against her forces. Fearing that Meereen would suffer the same fate as the other cities, she decided to hold off on traveling to Westeros, instead staying on as Queen of Meereen so she might learn to rule and protect the former slaves. Meanwhile, rumors about Daenerys Stormborn and her dragons spread across the known world. Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch even confided in his steward Sam Tarly, claiming that Daenerys was the prophesized hero that would come to save the realms of men. Unfortunately, he was too old to seek her out, and so the task fell to Archmaester Marwyn, who took up the mission after Aemon's death and traveled east to find Daenerys and offer his service and counsel. In Meereen, the queen struggled to maintain order as a rebel insurgency known as the Sons of the Harpy attacked her followers in the streets, fighting a shadow war on behalf of the great masters who once ruled the city. To combat this aggression, Daenerys placed a blood tax on the Meereenese nobility in order to fund a city watch known as the Brazen Beasts. She also took 2 hostages from each of their families, threatening to harm them if the attacks continued. And while the attacks did continue, she ultimately chose not to harm the hostages. Yet not all were against the new ruler of the city, with the former slaves and lower classes rising to prominence under the new government. A movement formed of those who embraced the new queen and changes in society, shaving off their hair as a symbol of this new beginning. The Shave Pates, as they became known, were led by Skahaz Mo Kandak, an advisor to the queen. A number of companies also formed from the recently liberated slave population, like the Mother's Men, Free Brothers, and Stalwart Shields. As time went on, the 3 dragons who flew in the skies above the city grew, with the largest of them being Drogon, who regularly killed farm animals in the countryside, creating a system where the royal court would pay for any livestock destroyed. However, when a man arrived with the bones of his deceased daughter, Daenerys realized her dragons were becoming a threat to the people, and while Drogon was able to fly away and escape, Rhaegal and Viserion were locked away where they could do no harm. Late one evening, the queen was visited by the mysterious woman Quaithe, who was using magic to make contact in order to recite yet another prophecy. The glass candles are burning, soon comes the pale mare, and after her the others. Kraken and Darkflame, Lion and Griffin, the Sun's Son and the Mummer's Dragon. Trust none of them, remember the Undying, beware the perfumed Seneschal. As the enemies of Meereen continued to gather all around them, Xaro Zoandaxis of Qarth arrived in the city, bringing 13 ships with him as a gift for the queen on the condition that she gather her soldiers and leave Slaver's Bay. He stated that her presence and actions had disrupted the slave trade in southern Essos, affecting the economies of Volantis and Qarth. However, she refused his offer, causing him to leave her a bloody glove on a satin pillow, meant to convey that Qarth declared war on Meereen. With an alliance of powers, including New Gis, Tolos, Qarth, Volantis, and the wise masters of Yunkai, they were able to defeat King Cleon of Astapor, taking the city and then sending a naval fleet to blockade Meereen as they prepared to march north. Meanwhile, Daenerys began to make a number of concessions to the Meereenese nobility in an attempt to stabilize the city and prepare for its defense. In order to stop the rebel insurgency and make peace with the other powers of Slaver's Bay, she agreed to marry a Meereenese nobleman named Hizdar Zo Lorak on the condition that he use his connections to stop the attacks from the Sons of the Harpy for 90 days. His success, however, in stopping the violence led Skahaz Mo Kandak to suggest that he may be the Harpy leader of the insurgents. As refugees from Astapor began trickling in from the south, they brought with them the Bloody Flux, also known as the Pale Mare, and so were not allowed to enter the city. The stress and severity of the situation led Daenerys to take Daario Naharis as a lover, and was then introduced to a man who revealed himself to be Quentyn Martell, son to the Prince of Dorne, who'd come to offer a marriage alliance, which would see their houses join together to conquer Westeros. However, with her immediate concern being the security of Meereen, she rejected his offer, instead planning to go through with her marriage to Hizdahr zo Loraq. To celebrate the terms of peace, a great celebration was held in the fighting pits of Meereen, where Hizdahr insisted that Daenerys try the honeyed locusts. However, she was so unhappy with the events unfolding, she had no appetite, leaving the man Strong Belwas to eat a great many of them. However, he soon fell ill, realizing that the locusts were poisoned. At the same time, Drogon returned, interrupting the festivities and landing in the arena. Daenerys, elated to see her dragon again, but also scared to see the fighters preparing to attack, ran to the creature, mounting it for the first time and flying away on its back, leaving the chaos of Meereen behind. Drogon took her deep into the Dothraki Sea, but refused to take her back, and so she began to walk through the grasslands. Unfortunately, she soon became grievously ill, hallucinating and losing consciousness. But she survived and once again mounted Drogon when he returned, then hunting down a horse, and together ate its charred remains. Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of Meereen, Mother of Dragons, was then found by the Dothraki Khalasar of Khal Jakko. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Knight of the X, Samey the Fair Butehaig, Honir the Dead Raven, and Septon Woodford of the Riverlands. If you would like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like and subscribe, and click on the links to see more.